Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'd like to start. We start with a presentation by Director General Eden Bar Tal about the IPC, and then we'll open it for questions. Mr. Director General, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. I appreciate your coming during the summer holiday. I know it's tough, but this is an important event. Not usually we are coming to such a brief with a very clear evidence on the severe conduct of international institute or research institute. This is rarely, and this is our second occasion that we do that, unfortunately. The IPC manipulated report based only on the IPC data, not addressing any external data and no other contradicting evidence that we have piles of them. Everything that I'm going to show you today is based on IPC data, which is based on Hamas data. Still, IPC made up data in its research, broke their own rules, did cherry picking with evidence, with data, hid contradicting data, and ignore contradicting data. On each claim, I will put just one sharp, clear evidence. With regard to the made-up data, data that doesn't exist is added to that report. First example, Hamas reports about 6 cases of death every day in Gaza, while the IPC standard in order to declare famine is 188. They are missing 182 cases of death daily, even when it's based on Hamas data. What IPC did in its report? Added a virtual additional 182 death cases a day, just to meet the threshold in order to come to the prefabricated conclusion of famine. Second evidence, IPC broke their own rules. IPC rules is not addressing the MUAC, MUAC indicator in areas like Gaza. In a global standard, everybody addressed the WHZ in those areas. This is the standard to apply to. In the Gaza report, the IPC, unsurprisingly, picked the MUAC standard indicator and not the global standard, because the global standard probably didn't provide the result they were looking for. Thirdly, another rule of the IPC that they didn't follow was that the rule prohibits clinical samples, not counting ill people, but healthy people. This is the rule, IPC rule. In the Gaza report, not surprisingly, the IPC report is using clinical samples. I think the harshest evidence I will put before of you today is something that every student in its first year in university, when conducting the first research, knows you can't do cherry picking with data. This is the ground rule for any research, anywhere, anytime. What happened in the IPC report? They did a full survey of exactly 15,749 children. This is the full data. But it brought them to a lower level of 12.5%, which is not enough for them to meet the prefabricated conclusion of famine, So what they did, they took half of the sampled children, 7,519. Only those who they choose, they base their conclusion, and surprisingly, the percentage became higher to 16%, which is 1% above the threshold. I don't think I need to do much more of explanation about a misconduct in student research, not to talk about international research institution. But it was not enough for the IPC in order to manipulate the report and coming to the prefabricated results. They hid data. They did 2 surveys. First one brought them to a result of 12%, much lower than the target they needed. So they did another one. And surprisingly, it brought them to 36%, which were they looking for. And what you find in the report? In the report, they mention only the second survey and buried in the annex the first one with the wrong result according to their expectations or their political will. I think it's also clear evidence about the misconduct and the motivation behind the report. But this is not the first time that IPC continues with biased reporting. Predictions versus reality. In June 24, IPC predicted 1.1 million people in famine. But the actual result, according to the IPC, was less than a third, 343,000. Less than a third. 70% mistake from prediction to actual results. In September 24, their prediction was almost 500,000, while the actual result, according to the IPC report, was 133,000. Still, 2/3 of a mistake. An honest mistake? I don't think so. And the third time, in May 25, they predicted 345,000 people, while the actual result were 244. So you can see a very clear picture of predictions, severe predictions, that making headlines, negative headlines, pointing the fingers against Israel, while reality on the ground is totally the opposite. And now you're asking yourself the question, who did it? So we looked briefly to the authors, and it was not hard to find that, for example, one of the authors posted on Twitter, on X, against Israel several times, and pro-Hamas and pro-Houthis. I think that gives all of us a very clear picture about the political motivation, about the people behind the report. But this is the responsibility of the IPC, not of the author. For conclusion, upon the clear evidence I shared with you now, the facts are very clear. The IPC report is forged for political purposes. No doubt the IPC manipulated and ignored data, broke its own rules, and hid contradictory evidence. That report was fabricated for a purpose, to support Hamas' fake starvation campaign. No other explanation can explain the hard evidence I shared with you about the manipulation, misconduct, I would say lying to the people, to the public of research institutes. Because of that, Israel demands that the IPC will retract immediately its fabricated report and publish a notice. If the IPC will fail to do so, within short time, we will call upon all donors of that research institute, share with them the evidence, share with them the misconduct, and we are sure that they will draw the right conclusion not to sponsor anymore a research institute that is politicized, manipulator, and working for an evil terror organization as a tool. We think that no one wants his money in such conduct. Thank you, and now I'll take a few questions.
And just to be clear, what you see here is a letter by the Director General to the IPC demanding to retract this report. An official letter that is going to be sent today.
Any question?
Yes, please. Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm Lily from Reuters. Given the widespread concern in the international community about the humanitarian situation in Gaza, is Israel planning to take any steps to facilitate more access for food, especially food for babies and other aid into Gaza? Thank you.
For weeks and more than weeks, Gaza is flooded with aid supply facilitated by Israel, crossing in all 4 crossing points, coming from Egypt, Jordan, Israel, everywhere. There is no lack of supply. The problems in Gaza of collecting and distributing lays on, first of all, the UN agencies. You can see the number of trucks waiting to be collected and distributed by the UN agencies. Around 500, 600 trucks a day are waiting to be collected and distributed. More than that, the Hamas conduct, and that must be very clear, is to disrupt, loot, taking over the aid for monetizing its efforts and especially recruiting new militants and arming them. But in the general picture of the humanitarian situation in Gaza is known to all leaders and also to the organizations themselves. There is a lot of aid coming into Gaza. Just to give you in numbers, just one UN organization bringing to Gaza per capita, per person, 10 times the supply than it provides in Sudan. 10 times. Just to give you relatively what is real hunger and what is political hunger. We are talking about political hunger and starvation campaign, not about humanitarian crisis. And that is a fact. Coming to see the number of trucks coming every day into Gaza, loaded with supply, everything, and baby food, that was the first thing coming in, including from Egypt. We did everything in order to facilitate the entry of large quantities of supplies and aid into Gaza, including aiding the private sector that flooding the markets with all kinds of goods. Some of them are much more than the essential aid. We are talking about usual products from all over coming in. If you will look into the website, Twitter, and other platforms, you'll see a lot of video clips coming out from Gaza, of Gazans, simple Gazans, restaurants promoting their own offerings. You are not going to see any shortage. More than that, you can't see pictures from Gaza of people in starvation. The few pictures, photos published by Hamas, echoed by irresponsible media outlets, was clear of sick and ill children that in the same pictures you saw their family members, all of them are in good condition, some of them suffering from a little bit heavyweight, but you didn't see starvation. You don't have any real evidence for that, but you have Hamas claims. Echoing Hamas claims by certain media outlets is irresponsible, and it's siding with Hamas, the worst terror organization known to everybody, and we know who they are and what they do. Relying on information coming from Hamas is not just being fooled by them, is conspiring with them.
Thank you. Next question, please. Yes.
Mr. Eden, thank you for having us. This is Victor La Regina from Record TV from Brazil. I would like to ask you about another issue, if I may. This week, Israel announced that diplomatic relations with Brazil will be conducted at a lower level. I would like to ask what practical implications might this have for Israeli citizens and business in Brazil, and what steps the Brazilian government can take to improve the relations with Israel.
Just to correct the data, it wasn't Israel decision, it was the Brazilian President Lula decision. So you can ask that question the Brazilian president.
Thank you. No other questions? Wrap up. Last question? Yes, please.
Thank you, Chloe, for IFP. So you said you sent a letter about this report from IPC. What steps do you plan on taking if the report is not withdrawn?
As I said before, we demand from the IPC to withdraw that letter immediately and publish a public notice about reasoning for that. And I think I showed you some of the reasons. There are more in the report. Now, if they fail to do so, it means that they are standing behind this forgery and this manipulation. And then, as I said, we are going to approach their donors, sharing with them the misconduct, and we are sure that such donors, responsible donors, will not give their money to hijacked research institute that pretended to be research but practically became a propaganda arm of a terrorist organization.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
It's now over. Thank you.